The first mistake they made was putting me in handcuffs. The second was leaving their own camera running. The black SUV hit my gravel driveway at 6:12 in the morning. Tires spat stones against the side of my Ford. A second vehicle stopped behind it, sealing off the road. Before the dust settled, 3 men in black uniforms were already moving toward me. The words community enforcement stretched across their chests in white block letters. Plastic badges caught the pale morning light. One carried a radio. One carried bolt cutters. Todd Mercer carried a gun. I had one hand on the door of my workshop when he grabbed the back of my jacket and slammed me against the hood of my truck. The metal was cold against my cheek. Hands where I can see them. His breath smelled like stale coffee and peppermint gum. The muzzle of his pistol pressed beneath my ribs while another man twisted my arms behind me. A plastic restraint snapped shut around my wrists. Too tight. The edge bit into my skin, and I felt a warm line of blood begin to crawl toward my palm. Across the lawn, my neighbor's sprinklers hissed in perfect rhythm. Somewhere farther down Cedar Ridge Drive, a garage door opened, then immediately closed again. Nobody wanted to watch, but everyone was watching. What exactly am I being detained for? I asked. Todd shoved my shoulder harder against the hood. You don't ask questions today, Cole. His body camera blinked red. That detail mattered. I lifted my head just enough to look directly into its lens. Make sure that thing is recording. Todd smiled. It was the kind of smile men wear when a uniform has convinced them they're more important than the law. You'll wish it wasn't. A white Lexus rolled to a stop beside the curb. Vanessa Whitmore stepped out wearing cream slacks, polished heels, and the same expensive perfume I could smell whenever she appeared at my door with another violation notice. She carried a red leather folder beneath one arm. That folder had followed me for 3 weeks. To my porch, to HOA meetings, now to my arrest. Vanessa crossed the wet grass without looking down. Sprinkler water darkened the tips of her shoes, but her attention stayed fixed on me. Did he have the drive? She asked. Todd searched my pockets. He took my keys, my phone, and my wallet. He opened it, flipped past my driver's license, and tossed it onto the hood. He never looked behind the old library card. Good. The steel watch beneath my sleeve vibrated once. A soft pulse against my wrist. Signal active. Vanessa stopped beside me and lowered her voice. You were warned to stop interfering with association business. I asked to see the financial records. You stole restricted information. I requested records that every homeowner is legally entitled to inspect. Her jaw tightened. For half a second, the sweet smile disappeared. Then it returned. We have our own procedures here. Todd pulled a small black device from my jacket pocket. It looked like an ordinary flash drive. Vanessa's eyes locked onto it. There, she said. That's what he took. Todd held it up like he'd recovered stolen diamonds. He had no idea the drive contained nothing except a transmitter and a federal tracking chip. Kyle Briggs, the youngest man in the group, shifted beside the SUV. Shouldn't we call the sheriff before transporting him? Vanessa turned slowly. Sheriff Prescott already knows. Kyle didn't look reassured. Neither did Todd, but he hit it better. He yanked open the rear door of the SUV. The smell of vinyl, gun oil, and industrial cleaner rolled into the morning air. Where are you taking me? I asked. Vanessa stepped close enough for me to see the powder settled in the fine lines around her eyes. To the clubhouse. The room without windows? Her smile froze. That was the first moment she realized I knew more than I should. Todd forced my head down and pushed me into the vehicle. The door slammed. Dark glass swallowed the sunrise. My wrists burned behind me. The transmitter vibrated a second time. Connection confirmed. Vanessa leaned toward the open front window. Nobody is coming for you, Mr. Cole. I looked at Todd's blinking camera, then at the red folder still tucked beneath her arm. She thought she was taking me somewhere no one could hear me scream. What she didn't know was that 23 federal agents had already heard every word. 3 weeks earlier, Cedar Ridge Estates had looked almost peaceful. That should have warned me. The lawns were cut to the same height. The mailboxes matched. Sprinklers clicked on at exactly 5:30 every morning, sending silver arcs across sidewalks that never seemed to collect dirt. Even the silence felt regulated. I moved into Lot 47 on a gray Monday afternoon with 1 pickup truck, 6 cardboard boxes, and my father's old workbench strapped beneath a blue tarp. The house had belonged to him for 28 years. Nothing fancy. Red brick. 2 bedrooms. A detached workshop leaning slightly toward the fence like it had grown tired of standing straight. The place still smelled like cedar dust, machine oil, and the bitter coffee he used to leave burning in the pot. He had died 11 months earlier. Cancer moved faster than paperwork. By the time the estate cleared probate, the weeds had climbed past the porch steps, and the HOA had already mailed 12 notices to an empty house. I found them stacked inside the front door. Landscape noncompliance, unapproved exterior deterioration, failure to maintain community appearance. The paper was thick, expensive. Each notice carried Vanessa Whitmore's signature in dark blue ink. I read every page. Then I filed them by date. That was something my father taught me. Never throw away a threat written on letterhead. To the neighbors, I was Ethan Cole, 39 years old, recently back in town, working as a furniture restorer. That part wasn't entirely false. I did restore furniture, mostly when I needed to think. Sanding old wood had a rhythm to it. Push, pull, breathe. Watch the damaged layer disappear. My real work required the same patience. Only the damage usually wore a suit. I spent my first week repairing the workshop door and rebuilding the fence along the eastern property line. I wore faded jeans, steel-toed boots, and the old canvas jacket my father had used on winter jobs. Nobody asked many questions. They made assumptions instead. People saw calluses in an old Ford and decided they understood a man. Vanessa arrived on the 8th day. I heard her before I saw her. The soft electric hum of a white Lexus. The sharp click of heels against my driveway. Then the scent of jasmine perfume cutting through sawdust and gasoline. She stopped outside the workshop without knocking. Cream-colored suit, gold bracelet, blonde hair fixed so perfectly it looked resistant to weather. A red leather folder rested beneath her arm. "Mr. Cole." I shut off the orbital sander. The sudden silence rang in my ears. "That's me." She looked past me into the workshop. Not curious. Inspecting. "I'm Vanessa Whitmore, president of the Cedar Ridge Homeowners Association." I recognized the signature. Her smile tightened. "I'm sure you did." She opened the folder and removed 4 forms. Resident registration, vehicle authorization, private security consent, emergency property access. The last one gave the HOA's enforcement team permission to enter my yard, garage, or home whenever they believed community safety was at risk. No warrant. No notice. No clear definition of risk. I held the page between 2 fingers. "You expect everyone to sign this? Responsible residents don't object. And the others?" Her eyes moved over my boots, my workbench, the dust on my sleeves. People who resist usually have something to hide. There it was. Not a question. A classification. I placed the form back in her folder. "I won't be signing." The sprinklers started across the street with a metallic hiss. Vanessa didn't move. For 1 second, the pleasant expression vanished, and I saw what lived underneath it. Cold calculation. Then she smiled again. "This community has procedures, Mr. Cole. So does the law." Her fingers tightened around the folder. A sheet shifted inside, exposing the corner of a financial statement. Blue logo. Silver compass. Delaware Commonwealth Trust. I had seen that logo before. 6 months earlier, it had appeared on a wire transfer connected to a public corruption case in another county. I kept my face still. Vanessa closed the folder. "You'll receive formal notice." She walked back to the Lexus, heels striking the gravel like a countdown. That evening, 3 violation letters appeared beneath my door. By midnight, I had photographed them, cataloged the signatures, and sent the bank logo to my partner. The next morning, a black SUV was parked across from Lot 47. Its engine was running. Its windows were dark, and the man behind the wheel was taking pictures of my house. The black SUV stayed across from my house for 43 minutes. Long enough to be noticed. Short enough for the driver to pretend he had never been there. I watched through a narrow gap in the workshop blinds while the engine idled beneath the morning fog. Exhaust drifted across the street. The man behind the wheel raised a camera twice, aimed it at my porch, then at the side gate. At 7:18, he drove away. At 7:31, Vanessa emailed me a notice for suspicious surveillance of community personnel. I almost admired the speed. 2 days later, I met the men behind the dark windows. I was driving home from the hardware store when the same SUV swung across Cedar Ridge Drive and stopped sideways in front of my truck. Red and blue lights flashed behind its grille. No siren. No county markings. Just enough theater to make a nervous person obey. A broad man stepped into the road and raised one gloved hand. Black uniform, tactical vest, pistol on his hip. The badge over his heart said Cedar Ridge Community Enforcement. I stopped 20 feet away. He walked to my window with the slow confidence of someone who had rehearsed this moment in a mirror. License and vehicle authorization. His name patch read Mercer. Todd Mercer? I asked. His eyes narrowed. You know me? Vanessa mentioned community security. That was a lie. Rachel had identified him the night before. Former private security guard. Fired twice. One assault complaint. No law enforcement certification in any state. Todd tapped the glass with 2 knuckles. Documents. I lowered the window 3 inches. You're blocking a private road. This is HOA jurisdiction. That doesn't answer the question. His jaw shifted. Behind him, a younger officer climbed out of the passenger side. Kyle Briggs, 26. Clean record. Newly hired. He looked uncomfortable holding his hand near an empty holster. Todd leaned closer. Open the window. Am I being detained? You're being inspected. Under what law? Our authority comes from the board. There it was. Not the city. Not the county. The board. Todd reached for my door handle. It was locked. For half a second, frustration cracked through his performance. Then he smiled. Opened the trunk. No, his fingers curled against the glass. The badge on his vest caught the sunlight. Up close, I could see the molding seam around its edge. Plastic painted silver. No serial number. No agency seal. Nothing that would survive 5 minutes in a courtroom. I looked past him at the SUV. Nevada plate. Commercial registration sticker. Aftermarket emergency lights mounted illegally behind the grille. The radio clipped to Todd's shoulder hissed on a civilian business frequency. Every detail mattered. Todd stepped back and rested his hand on his pistol. The holster had no retention lock. Cheap equipment carried by an angry amateur. You refusing a lawful order, Cole? I'm refusing an order from a homeowners association employee. Kyle glanced toward him. Todd, maybe we should call it in. Todd ignored him. People who cooperate don't have problems here. And people who don't. His smile returned. We find ways to correct them. A dry leaf scraped across the pavement between us. Nobody spoke. Then Todd slapped the roof of my truck and moved aside. Consider this your warning. I drove home without looking back. Martha Keene was waiting near my mailbox. She was 68, small enough to disappear inside her gray cardigan, with both hands wrapped around a folded invoice. Her fingers trembled when she gave it to me. Cedar Ridge Vehicle Recovery. $4,800. They took my Buick, she whispered. My husband bought it before he died. For what reason? They said it was abandoned. Where was it parked? In my garage. The paper smelled faintly of cigarette smoke. Payment instructions listed only cash, money order, or transfer to a Nevada company. The same company registered to Todd's SUV. Martha looked toward the street before speaking again. They brought me to a room under the clubhouse. No windows. They took my phone and told me I couldn't leave until I signed. The air inside my chest went still. This was no longer harassment. It was confinement. Extortion. Possibly organized fraud. I folded the invoice and placed it in an evidence sleeve from my workbench. Martha watched me seal it. You're not really a furniture repairman, are you? I looked through the window at the red light blinking beneath my security camera. Today, I said. That's all Vanessa needs to believe. The room beneath the clubhouse smelled like bleach, damp carpet, and old fear. I found it 3 nights after Martha gave me the invoice. Not by breaking in. Vanessa invited me. The monthly HOA meeting started at 7, but people were lining up outside the clubhouse by 6:30, clutching violation notices like medical test results. Nobody spoke above a whisper. Todd stood beside the entrance with his arms folded, his plastic badge shining under the porch lights. Kyle worked the check-in table. He avoided my eyes. Inside, folding chairs faced a polished wooden platform. Vanessa sat at the center beneath a gold sign that read Cedar Ridge Community First. The irony was almost elegant. Her red folder rested beside the microphone. Todd took a position behind my chair, close enough that I could smell gun oil and the cinnamon gum he chewed when he was nervous. Vanessa opened the meeting with a speech about safety, property values, and residents who refused to embrace shared responsibility. Then she looked directly at me. Mr. Cole has challenged our security procedures, refused lawful inspections, and created unnecessary hostility toward community personnel. Every head turned. I stayed seated. That's not what happened, I said. Todd placed one heavy hand on my shoulder. His fingers tightened slowly. Vanessa smiled. Please wait until you're recognized. You just addressed me by name. A few people shifted in their chairs. Martha sat in the back row, holding her purse against her chest. Vanessa lifted a page from the red folder. Your outstanding balance is now $3,200. Continued refusal may result in emergency property action. What does that mean? It means the association may secure your home. You mean seize it? Her expression didn't change. If necessary. The room went silent. I let the silence work. Then I reached inside my jacket. Todd's hand moved toward his weapon. I pulled out a pen, a cheap black ballpoint. I placed it on the table beside me. The microphone hidden beneath the clip was already transmitting to Rachel in a van 2 streets away. Can the association detain homeowners who dispute fines? I asked. Vanessa glanced at Todd. We can temporarily restrict movement during an active security concern. Restrict movement where? That depends on the circumstances. Downstairs. Her eyes sharpened. I had touched the nerve. Todd leaned closer to my ear. You need to stop talking. I turned slightly. Or what? His grip dug into the muscle near my collarbone. Vanessa struck the gavel once. Mr. Cole, you are disrupting official proceedings. No. I'm asking where you took Martha Keene. Martha's breath caught behind me. Vanessa's smile disappeared. Todd grabbed my arm and pulled me to my feet. Chairs scraped across the floor. Someone whispered my name. Kyle stepped forward, then stopped when Vanessa raised one finger. Escort him out, she said. Todd shoved me toward the rear hallway instead of the front door. That was exactly what I wanted. The corridor narrowed beyond the kitchen. The air grew colder. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. We passed a locked office, then a steel door. Todd entered a 4-digit code and pushed me through. The room had no windows. Gray carpet. One table. 2 plastic chairs bolted to the floor. A camera in the upper corner. A metal cabinet against the wall. The smell of bleach was strongest there, but underneath it I caught cigarette smoke and something metallic. Todd closed the door behind us. No audience now, he said. He took my phone and placed it on the table. Then he pointed to a document. Admission of noncompliance. Sign it. I read the first paragraph. By signing, I would admit that the HOA had lawful authority to enter my property, seize personal assets, and place a lien on the house. A second page authorized transfer of ownership if fines remained unpaid for 30 days. I looked at Todd. How many people signed this? As many as needed correction. The pen in my jacket was gone. Still upstairs. Still recording. Todd didn't know I had dropped a second device beneath the conference table before he moved me. Voices crackled faintly through the wall. Vanessa's. Then a man's voice. Older. Controlled. Sheriff Alan Prescott. You said Cole was alone, he muttered. He is, Vanessa replied. Then get his signature. Once he signs, we take the house, just like the others. The words traveled cleanly through the microphone. I sat back in the bolted chair. Todd mistook the movement for surrender. It wasn't. It was the moment a corrupt HOA dispute became a federal conspiracy case. The next morning, I paid Vanessa $200. Not because I owed her. Because frightened men make payments. I stood inside the HOA office wearing the same canvas jacket, holding a money order with both hands while Vanessa watched from behind her polished desk. Sunlight cut through the blinds in thin white bars. Her red folder sat open beside a crystal bowl filled with wrapped mints. You've made the sensible choice, she said. I kept my eyes on the floor. I don't want any more trouble. The words tasted worse than the office coffee cooling beside her computer. Vanessa leaned back. Power changed her face. The tighter I made my shoulders, the more relaxed hers became. This community rewards cooperation. I can't pay the full balance. That creates complications. I need time. She folded her hands over the folder. How much time? A month. Maybe 2. Her smile softened in the way a trap softens when it opens. There may be another solution. I looked up slowly. She turned a printed form toward me. Voluntary Property Resolution Agreement. The language was dense, but the purpose was simple. I would give Cedar Ridge the right to manage the house, list it for sale, deduct my fines, and keep any administrative costs it considered reasonable. They had done this before. The formatting matched Martha's confession form. Same font. Same Nevada company in the footer. I let my fingers tremble as I touched the page. You can take the house. Only if that's what protects you financially. From the fines you created? Her eyes cooled. I lowered my voice immediately. Sorry. I'm just trying to understand. The smile returned. Of course. She spent the next 20 minutes explaining the machinery of the crime. Not all at once. People like Vanessa rarely confess when accused. They confess when admired. I asked how she resolved difficult properties so quickly. She told me Cedar Ridge had a private legal process. I asked whether the county reviewed the transfers. She said Sheriff Prescott handled local concerns. I asked where residents signed the final documents. She tapped one red fingernail against the desk. Downstairs, when necessary. Every answer traveled through the steel watch beneath my sleeve. Rachel was listening from a rented utility van beyond the western gate. When I left the office, I found her waiting inside my workshop. She stood beside my father's workbench, dressed in jeans and a gray windbreaker. The smell of fresh-cut pine, mixed with rain drifting through the open window. You looked convincing, she said. I felt dirty. You got her to confirm the property transfer system. Not Prescott's payment. Rachel placed a tablet on the bench. Bank records filled the screen. Transfers from Cedar Ridge Vehicle Recovery moved through Delaware Commonwealth Trust, then disappeared into 3 shell companies. One belonged to Vanessa. One belonged to Todd. The third was registered to Prescott's brother-in-law. That's connection, I said. Not proof Prescott controls it. Exactly. I removed the watch and set it beside the tablet. So we keep pushing. Rachel studied me. They already confined you once. They let me leave because they thought I was scared. They may not next time. Outside, a lawnmower started. Its engine droned through the neighborhood like nothing illegal had ever happened there. I looked at Todd's restraint hanging from his belt in a photograph on the tablet. Black plastic. Disposable. Easy to explain away unless someone watched him use it. We need an overt act, I said. Illegal detention. Property seizure. Direct instruction from Vanessa or Prescott. Rachel's expression hardened. You're talking about letting them arrest you. I'm talking about letting them believe they can. For the next 4 days, I played the role. I stopped challenging patrols. I apologized to Todd. I asked Vanessa whether selling the house would erase my balance. Then I deliberately carried a black drive from the HOA records room where their cameras could see it. By sunset, the black SUV was parked across from Lot 47 again. At 8:14, Vanessa called Todd. At 8:19, Rachel intercepted one sentence. Get the drive before Cole leaves the neighborhood. I stood inside my workshop and fastened the steel watch around my wrist. On the wall, my father's old rule was burned into a wooden plaque. Measure twice. Cut once. I slipped the transmitter into my jacket. Then I opened the garage door and let them see me step outside. They watched my house all night. The black SUV moved twice. At 10:40, it parked beneath the dead streetlight near the eastern gate. At 1:13, it rolled past my workshop with its headlights off. By 5:50, it had disappeared. That was when I knew they were close. I left the transmitter inside my jacket and placed the black drive in the outer pocket where Todd could find it easily. The device contained no HOA records. Just a tracking chip, an audio relay, and enough empty storage to make it look convincing. Rachel's voice came through the receiver hidden in my ear. Teams are in position. I poured coffee into my father's dented steel mug. Prescott, no movement yet. We need his voice. We also need you breathing. I looked through the kitchen window. Morning fog hung above the lawns. Sprinklers clicked on in perfect sequence. Cedar Ridge looked clean, quiet, and harmless. That was the trick. At 6:12, tires tore into my driveway. The first SUV stopped beside my Ford. The second blocked the road. Todd reached me before I cleared the workshop door. His shoulder hit my chest. His hand twisted my jacket. The cold hood of the truck slammed against my cheek. Don't move. Kyle grabbed my right arm. A third man took the left. The plastic restraint closed around my wrists with a sharp mechanical snap. Pain shot through my hands. I let it. Where's the drive? Todd demanded. I don't know what you're talking about. He drove his forearm between my shoulder blades. The transmitter pressed against my ribs. Still active. Kyle's breathing sounded fast. Todd, we should wait for the sheriff. Vanessa gave the order. That isn't the same thing. Todd turned his head. You want to keep this job? Kyle went silent. Across the lawn, the white Lexus arrived. Vanessa stepped out holding the red folder. Her perfume reached me before she did, sweet and sharp against the smell of exhaust and wet grass. "Search him," she said. Todd pulled my phone from one pocket and my wallet from the other. He found the black drive exactly where I had left it. His face changed. "There." Vanessa took one step closer. "Did he copy the accounts?" Todd held the drive up. "We'll know soon." I turned my head enough to see his body camera blinking red. "Make sure that stays on." He smiled and shoved me harder against the hood. "You think this is a performance?" "No," I said. "I think it's evidence." The smile faded. Vanessa opened the rear door of the SUV. "Take him downstairs." Cal stared at her. "Do we have detention paperwork?" "We'll complete it later." "Signed by who?" Her voice sharpened. "Sheriff Prescott will handle it." The words traveled cleanly through my watch. Rachel had the first piece. Not enough. Todd forced me into the vehicle. The interior smelled like vinyl, sweat, and gun oil. A steel partition separated the front seats from the back. There were scratches around the inside door handles. Other people had sat there. Other people had tried to get out. Kyle climbed into the passenger seat. Todd drove. Vanessa followed in her Lexus. We passed 3 houses, the pool, and the empty playground. Curtains moved in nearby windows, then fell still. Nobody came outside. The clubhouse garage opened before we arrived. That meant someone had been waiting. Todd pulled me from the SUV and marched me through the service entrance. My shoulder struck the door frame. Kyle flinched, but said nothing. Downstairs, the fluorescent lights buzzed above us. Todd unlocked the steel door. The room, without windows, waited on the other side. The table had already been prepared. My transfer agreement sat beside a pen. So did a handgun. Vanessa entered behind us and closed the door. "Open the drive," she said. "I can't." Todd placed the gun on the table with the barrel facing me. Vanessa's expression remained calm. "You're going to give us the files, sign the agreement, and surrender the house. And if I refuse?" She looked at Todd. He picked up the weapon. For the first time that morning, the fear in my chest was real. Then the watch beneath my sleeve vibrated twice. The federal teams had reached the building. All I needed now was one direct order. Vanessa leaned across the table. "Do whatever it takes," she told Todd. "Prescott will clean up the paperwork later." I looked at the blinking camera on his chest. That was it. They had finally said enough. The room went silent after Vanessa gave the order. Not quiet. Silent. There's a difference. Quiet is peaceful. Silence is what happens when everyone realizes a line has been crossed. Todd stood beside the table with the handgun in his right hand. The body camera on his chest kept blinking red. Kyle stayed near the door, pale beneath the fluorescent lights. Vanessa slid the transfer agreement toward me. "Sign it." The plastic restraint had cut deeper into my wrists. I could feel blood drying beneath the edge. The air smelled like bleach, warm circuitry, and Todd's cinnamon gum. I looked at Vanessa. "Just so I understand." Her mouth tightened. "You are ordering these men to hold me here against my will?" "I'm ordering them to protect this association. And if I refuse to surrender my house?" She glanced at the gun. "Todd will make you cooperative." Kyle stepped forward. "Vanessa, that isn't what you said this was." She turned on him. "You work for me. I work security. You work for whoever signs your paycheck." That sentence hit him harder than a fist. Todd raised the weapon slightly. "Enough talking." I looked directly at his camera. "Is that device connected to your control system?" He frowned. "What? Your body camera. Is it transmitting live?" His grip shifted. Vanessa leaned closer. "Why does that matter?" I touched the steel watch beneath my sleeve twice. The lights went out. Todd swore. The room dropped into darkness, so complete I could hear Vanessa's breath catch. Then the emergency system activated. Red lights flooded the walls. A low alarm began pulsing through the basement. Once. Twice. 3 times. Above us, tires screamed across the clubhouse parking lot. Doors slammed. Heavy boots struck concrete in fast, controlled rhythm. Todd turned toward the hallway. "What the hell is that?" The answer came through the steel door. "Federal Bureau of Investigation." "Drop the weapon." Todd froze. Vanessa didn't. She grabbed the black drive from the table and rushed toward the filing cabinet. The door exploded inward before she reached it. Metal struck the wall with a crack that shook dust from the ceiling. Rachel Bennett entered first. Dark tactical vest. Service weapon raised. Gold FBI lettering across her chest. Behind her came 12 federal agents, 2 state investigators, and a tactical medic. "Gun down," Rachel shouted. Todd stared at her badge, then at the plastic one pinned to his own chest. For the first time since I met him, he looked exactly as powerful as he really was. He dropped the weapon. It struck the carpet with a dull thud. Kyle raised both hands. "I didn't know," he said. "I swear I didn't know." Vanessa backed toward the cabinet, clutching the drive against her chest. "This is private property." Rachel's eyes never left her. "We have a federal warrant. You can't enter an HOA facility without board authorization." Rachel almost smiled. Then she unfolded the document and held it where Vanessa could see the judge's signature. "Your board doesn't outrank the United States District Court." Two agents cut the restraint from my wrists. Blood rushed back into my hands in hot, painful waves. Todd watched them free me. Confusion moved across his face. "Who are you?" I rubbed the raw skin around my wrists, then reached into my wallet. Behind the old library card sat a second identification sleeve. I opened it. The gold badge caught the red emergency light. "Special Agent Ethan Cole." Todd's mouth opened. Nothing came out. "Federal Bureau of Investigation," I continued. "Public Corruption Task Force." Vanessa stared at me as if my face had changed. "You're a carpenter." "Sometimes." "You moved here 3 weeks ago." "I moved here because 17 homeowners were stripped of property through fraudulent liens, forged transfers, and illegal detention." Her eyes flicked toward the body camera. I followed them. "That camera has been transmitting to a federal evidence server since the moment Todd put his hands on me." Todd looked down at the blinking red light. The same device he had used to frighten residents had recorded the gun, the threats, the forced agreement, and Vanessa's order. Every word, every movement, every crime. Rachel stepped behind Vanessa and took the black drive from her hand. "You are under arrest for conspiracy, extortion, unlawful imprisonment, wire fraud, and attempted destruction of evidence." Vanessa's practiced smile finally broke. "You don't understand who I know." A second team entered the hallway with Sheriff Prescott in handcuffs. His uniform shirt was open at the collar. His face had gone gray. Vanessa stared at him. Prescott wouldn't look back. Rachel secured Vanessa's wrists. The steel cuffs clicked shut. Real cuffs. Real authority. Real consequences. I picked Todd's plastic badge off the floor and placed it beside the signed federal warrant. One had been designed to scare people. The other had been earned through evidence. Vanessa had spent years teaching Cedar Ridge to fear uniforms. That morning, she learned the difference between wearing power and facing it. Vanessa made one final mistake before the agents took her upstairs. She ran for the red folder. It sat on top of the metal cabinet, swollen with contracts, transfer records, and handwritten notes. The same folder she had carried to my porch. The same one she had opened whenever she wanted a homeowner to feel small. Now she grabbed it with both hands and lunged toward a steel trash can in the corner. "Stop!" Rachel shouted. Vanessa ignored her. She pulled a silver lighter from her pocket and struck it once. Nothing. Twice. A flame appeared. Todd watched from his knees, hands locked behind his head. "Vanessa, don't." She touched the fire to the edge of the first page. The paper curled black. Then the ceiling erupted. The fire suppression system released with a violent hiss. Freezing water hammered the room, flattened Vanessa's hair, and knocked the lighter from her hand. Red ink poured from the folder across her fingers. For one strange second, it looked like blood. Rachel took the documents from her and handed them to an evidence technician. "Attempted destruction," she said. "Add it." Vanessa stood soaked beneath the emergency lights, mascara running down her cheeks. "This association belongs to me." "No," I said. "That was the problem." Agents opened the cabinet. Inside were 17 property files arranged by street number. Martha Keene's name was on the first tab. Each folder contained violation notices, forged acknowledgments, altered lien documents, and photographs of valuables taken from homes. Watches, jewelry, vehicle titles, family heirlooms. They had cataloged stolen lives like office supplies. The second drawer held payment ledgers. Cash collected from frightened residents moved through Cedar Ridge Vehicle Recovery, then into Delaware Commonwealth Trust. From there, the money split 3 ways. Vanessa, Todd, Prescott. The amounts beside the sheriff's initials were written in blue ink. $5,000 for ignoring detention complaints. $8,000 for blocking a fraud report. $12,000 for ordering deputies to return Martha when she tried to report her stolen Buick. Prescott stood in the hallway between 2 agents. When Rachel showed him the ledger, his face lost what little color remained. "That isn't my handwriting." Rachel turned the page. A photograph had been stapled beneath the entry. Prescott sat in Vanessa's Lexus holding an envelope, date and time printed in the corner. His own patrol vehicle was visible behind him. Kyle saw it too. His shoulders collapsed. "I can tell you where the cars are," he said. Todd twisted toward him. "Shut your mouth." Kyle looked at the gun on the floor, then at the badge in Rachel's hand. "No." That single word changed everything. He gave us the address of a warehouse outside the county line. He described the holding room, the cash collections, and the nights Todd removed vehicles from locked garages. By noon, agents had recovered 3 cars, boxes of personal property, and a safe containing $74,000 in cash. Martha's Buick sat beneath a gray tarp. Dust covered the hood, but her husband's faded veteran sticker was still on the rear window. When she arrived, she pressed both hands against the steering wheel and cried without making a sound. Vanessa watched from the back of a federal vehicle. No red folder. No Lexus. No board members surrounding her. Just steel glass and locked doors. She leaned toward the window as I passed. "You targeted me." I stopped. "No. I followed the evidence. I protected this neighborhood. You stole from people who were afraid to fight back." Her wet fingers curled against the glass. "They'll believe me." I looked toward Martha, sitting inside the Buick with her forehead resting against the wheel. Then I looked back at Vanessa. "That's the thing about evidence," I said. "It doesn't care who sounds believable." The vehicle door closed. The lock engaged with a hard metallic click. For years, Vanessa had used that sound to frighten everyone else. Now it belonged to her. 6 months later, the Cedar Ridge clubhouse smelled like fresh paint instead of bleach. The basement room was gone. County workers had removed the steel door, torn out the bolted chairs, and filled the walls with concrete. Nobody argued when the new board voted to turn the space into storage for community emergency supplies. Some rooms should never be used again. Vanessa Whitmore stood before a federal judge on a cold Thursday morning. No cream-colored suit. No red folder. Just a gray detention uniform and wrists held together at her waist. She pleaded guilty to conspiracy, wire fraud, extortion, unlawful imprisonment, and attempted destruction of evidence. Todd Mercer took a separate deal after 3 former employees testified against him. Sheriff Prescott refused to cooperate. The jury needed less than 4 hours. His badge was removed before sentencing. The judge gave Vanessa 11 years. Todd received 7. Prescott received 14. The numbers mattered, but they weren't the part one remembered. I remembered Martha sitting behind me when the verdict was read. Her hands were folded over the keys to her Buick. When the clerk said guilty, she closed her eyes and whispered her husband's name. That was justice. Not applause. Not revenge. A widow holding something they had failed to steal forever. Federal forfeiture recovered enough money to repay every homeowner targeted by the scheme. Fraudulent liens were erased. Property transfers were reversed. Families who had moved away were offered compensation from the seized accounts. Cedar Ridge community enforcement disappeared overnight. The black SUVs were auctioned. The uniforms became evidence. Todd's plastic badge stayed in my case file until the investigation officially closed. The residents elected a new board in the spring. For the first time in 12 years, every seat had more than one candidate. The meeting was held in the clubhouse on a Tuesday evening. Folding chairs filled the room, but the atmosphere felt different. People spoke without looking over their shoulders. Martha sat in the front row. Kyle Briggs sat near the back. He had testified, accepted probation, and spent 4 months helping investigators locate stolen property. Some residents still didn't trust him. I understood. Cooperation doesn't erase what you did. It only determines what you do next. The new board president asked me to say a few words. I hadn't planned to. I walked to the front carrying 2 objects. Todd's plastic badge, a certified copy of the federal search warrant. I placed them side by side on the table. The room went quiet. "This one," I said, touching the badge, "was designed to make people afraid." Then I touched the warrant. "This one was built from evidence." No one clapped at first. Martha did. Then everyone else joined her. I went home before the meeting ended. The night air smelled like rain and cut grass. My boots crunched over the same gravel where Todd had forced me against the truck. The bloodstain was gone. The memory wasn't. Inside the workshop, my father's workbench waited beneath a single yellow light. His wooden sign still hung above it. "Measure twice. Cut once." I opened the top drawer. The cut plastic restraint lay inside an evidence bag beside my old library card. I placed Todd's badge next to it. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. Power looks different when you examine it closely. Sometimes it wears a uniform and shouts orders. Sometimes it carries a red folder and smiles while taking you home. Real authority doesn't need either one. It listens. It documents. It waits until lies have nowhere left to hide. Outside, a tow truck rolled slowly past Lot 47. The last black SUV followed behind it, stripped of its lights and markings. At the end of the street, workers removed the old Cedar Ridge enforcement sign from the gate. The metal bolts squealed as they came loose. Then the sign dropped into the grass. Vanessa thought she owned the neighborhood because people were afraid to challenge her. Todd thought a plastic badge made him a police officer. Prescott thought his real badge made him untouchable. They were all wrong. Authority without accountability is only intimidation wearing a costume. And justice? Justice isn't loud. It doesn't need flashing lights or threats. It builds its case quietly, one signature, one recording, one frightened witness at a time. Then, when the truth is ready, it closes the door behind you. They tried to snatch me because they thought I was alone. They didn't know I was FBI. But the badge wasn't what defeated them. The evidence did.